Seih Al-Dahal. The name barely registers in the consciousness of a civilization built on oil. It is a flat, featureless stretch of Arabian desert, approximately 55 kilometers southwest of Dubai's gleaming skyline. A landscape of compacted sand and gravel under a sky so violently, relentlessly white with sunlight, that human eyes, exposed without protection, begin to ache within minutes. The Arabian Peninsula has been receiving this punishment for millions of years. The geological formation beneath the desert floor, the vast, ancient Arabian Shield, has sat under one of the most merciless solar bombardments on Earth since before the first human civilization carved its first stone into the land to the north. For millennia, this desert was an adversary. Temperatures exceeding 50 degrees Celsius at ground level. Sandstorms that materialize in minutes and swallow entire landscapes in abrasive, particle-laden fury. Zero surface water. Annual rainfall measured in single-digit millimeters. Ancient Bedouin navigators crossed it on camels, by necessity, in calculated submission to its hostility. They did not try to industrialize it. They did not try to harvest it. They moved through it, carefully, and they survived. Logic dictates that a desert is not a power plant. The same extreme heat that makes the Arabian sun appear inexhaustible actively punishes every photovoltaic panel exposed to it. Solar cells lose between 10 and 25% of their rated power output as ambient temperatures climb above the standard 25-degree operating threshold, meaning the most photon-rich environment on Earth is simultaneously one of the worst thermal environments for the equipment designed to capture those photons. Dust accumulation in a desert that generates sandstorms capable of reducing visibility to zero within minutes degrades energy yield by as much as 0.8% per day on unprotected panels, compounding into catastrophic efficiency losses over weeks without intervention, and cleaning them requires water that does not exist here. The desert's weapons are precise. It offers abundant photons with one hand and destroys the machines receiving them with the other. In 2014, Dubai announced that it would build on this exact battlefield the largest solar power complex on Earth. Not a modest pilot program, not a phased experiment. A full industrial-scale assault on the sun itself, targeting 8,000 megawatts of generating capacity by 2030. Enough electricity to power approximately 3 million homes, constructed across a desert landscape that, by every engineering metric, was designed to destroy the equipment being placed into it. The project, the Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum Solar Park. The battlefield, Seih Al-Dahal. The ambition, to transform the desert from civilization's greatest historical enemy into its most powerful ally. This is the story of how Dubai, a city built on petroleum extracted from the same geological forces that created the desert above it, declared war on energy dependence by pointing its most advanced engineering at the most hostile landscape in the world, and began building, phase by phase, a solar machine of such colossal scale that when it is complete, it will have permanently altered the physical geography of the Arabian desert, and possibly the trajectory of every nation that has ever believed fossil fuels were the only answer the ground beneath their feet could offer. To understand what this desert actually does to industrial equipment, you need to abandon the promotional imagery and stand in Seih Al-Dahal in July. Ground level temperatures hover near 70 degrees Celsius in direct sunlight, hot enough to fuse polymer adhesives, degrade junction box sealing compounds, and accelerate the delamination of encapsulant layers inside solar panels at rates that cut projected lifespan from 30 years to 20 or fewer without precise materials engineering. The daily thermal cycle, swinging from peak heat to nighttime cooling of 30 degrees or more, subjects every mechanical connection, every mounting bracket, every cable junction to relentless expansion and contraction fatigue. The sand carried by the shamal winds that sweep across the peninsula is not smooth beach sand. It is fine-grained, angular, abrasive silica that etches glass surfaces with the efficiency of industrial sandpaper, permanently scratching the anti-reflective coatings that maximize panel efficiency. And the dust that settles in the absence of wind is electrostatically charged, clinging to glass surfaces with a molecular tenacity that ordinary brushes cannot dislodge without risking the physical abrasion they are designed to prevent. The desert does not attack this infrastructure occasionally. It attacks it continuously, from every direction, at every time scale, from instantaneous to geological. The economic desperation behind this project is not theatrical. It is a cold arithmetic calculation about the survivability of a city-state whose entire identity was built on a commodity that will eventually run out. Dubai's oil reserves are modest by Gulf standards, already substantially depleted, and the Emirates' leadership understood with clinical clarity decades ago that the post-petroleum transition was not a distant abstraction but an approaching deadline. The Dubai Clean Energy Strategy 2050 commits the Emirate to sourcing 100% of its energy production capacity from clean sources by mid-century. The Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum Solar Park is not a gesture towards sustainability. It is the primary structural mechanism through which a civilization that grew wealthy, burning hydrocarbons, plans to survive their exhaustion. The weapons deployed against Seih Al-Dahal are a layered, phased industrial assault, unlike anything the renewable energy industry has previously executed. Phase 1 through Phase 5 established the industrial beachhead, gigawatts of bifacial photovoltaic panels mounted on single-axis trackers that follow the sun's arc across the sky, maximizing exposure across the day. The bifacial technology was a deliberate engineering choice. These panels capture sunlight not only through their front surface, but through their rear face, harvesting reflected radiation bouncing off the desert floor, a desert so reflective in its pale, compacted state that it effectively becomes a distributed mirror system. Phase 4 introduced the project's most extraordinary engineering weapon, a concentrated solar power tower rising 263.126 meters above the desert floor, certified by Guinness World Records as the tallest CSP tower on Earth. Surrounding it, thousands of computer-controlled heliostats, motorized mirrors each the size of a tennis court, track the sun with millimeter precision, focusing its energy onto a receiver at the tower's apex. Inside that receiver, over 1,000 thin-walled tubes carry molten salt through concentrated solar radiation. The salt heats to temperatures exceeding 500 degrees Celsius, storing thermal energy with a capacity of 5,907 megawatt-hours, enough to generate electricity through the night long after the sun has abandoned the desert to darkness. Against dust, the park deploys an army of waterless, autonomous robots that crawl the panel surfaces on scheduled routes, brushing accumulated particles away with precision microfiber systems that consume no water in a landscape where water is more strategically valuable than electricity. The numbers compress every previous solar record into irrelevance. 8,000 megawatts of target capacity by 2030, a figure that exceeds the total electricity generation capacity of many mid-sized nations. As of early 2026, 3,860 megawatts were already operational, a generating fleet larger than the entire grid capacity of some sovereign countries. Phase 6 alone adds 1,800 megawatts of bifacial PV. Phase 7, currently in procurement, pairs 2,000 megawatts of solar panels with 1,400 megawatts of battery energy storage, providing 8,400 megawatt-hours of dispatchable capacity, making it simultaneously one of the largest solar projects and the largest battery storage projects anywhere on the planet. The park's total footprint, when complete, will cover a land area equivalent to a medium-sized city, a machine landscape of glass and steel and precision tracking mechanisms consuming the desert from horizon to horizon. Early milestones arrived with the disciplined velocity of a state project operating without political opposition. Phase 1 commissioned on schedule. Phase 2 expanded the footprint. Phase 3 added the CSP parabolic trough complex alongside the PV fields. Phase 4's tower rose above the desert and began its record-setting thermal storage operations. Each commissioning event delivered electricity to Dubai's grid at solar tariffs that broke global records for cost-competitive renewables, with the park achieving electricity prices as low as 1.69 US cents per kilowatt-hour in later phases, a figure so low it undercut natural gas generation in the same market. The desert was, against every physical objection being made to yield. Then the desert reminded the engineers of what it actually costs to maintain a precision optical instrument the size of a city in a sandstorm environment. Soiling, the accumulation of dust, sand, and particulate matter on panel surfaces, proved not merely an inconvenience but an existential operational threat. Studies across UAE solar installations documented efficiency losses accelerating to catastrophic levels during haboob dust events that can blanket the entire peninsula in suspended particulate matter for days at a time. The heliostat mirrors of the CSP tower, each one a precision optical surface that must reflect focused solar radiation to within fractions of a degree of accuracy, are particularly vulnerable. A film of dust too thin to see clearly is sufficient to scatter enough of the focused beam to reduce thermal output significantly. The robotic cleaning fleet represents not a convenience feature, but a continuous operational requirement. Without it, the park would bleed efficiency losses in cumulative percentages that would financially destabilize the project's economic model within months. Today, in 2026, the Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum Solar Park hums across Seih Al-Dahal with the mechanical pulse of a system that has already remade Dubai's energy balance and is still expanding. Phase 6 is 68% complete. Phase 7 is in active procurement, its 1,400 megawatt battery system, representing the next frontier of 24-hour solar power delivery. The tower at 263 meters casts its shadow across the desert at dawn and stores summer heat in molten salt for release at midnight. The autonomous robots complete their circuits across the panel arrays as the temperature climbs. The park generates moment by moment the electricity that powers the screens, the air conditioners, the desalination plants, and the airport terminals of a civilization that was built on oil and is learning, at industrial scale, to live on light. The paradox carved into the desert floor of Seih Al-Dahal is one that no energy economist designed and no politician announced. The same desert that built Dubai's wealth by yielding petroleum from its subsurface geology is now being asked to sustain Dubai's future by yielding solar energy from its surface. The Rub al-Khali, the empty quarter, the largest continuous sand desert on Earth, receives between 5.7 and 6.7 kilowatt hours of solar energy per square meter per day, a resource so vast and so reliably constant that the theoretical solar potential of the Arabian Peninsula alone exceeds total global electricity consumption by a factor of dozens. The desert was never empty, it was loaded. The oil was the compressed memory of ancient sunlight. The panels are the real-time capture of sunlight arriving now. The desert has been a solar power plant since before life existed on its surface. Humanity is only now building the infrastructure to connect to it. What Seih Al-Dahal teaches, and what every desert nation sitting on the same solar resource must eventually reckon with, is not a lesson about technology. The photovoltaic cell, the heliostat, the molten salt receiver, the battery storage system, these are solved engineering problems. The actual lesson is about the duration of commitment required to wage a successful industrial campaign against a hostile environment. The desert does not capitulate. It does not acknowledge that the first panel produced its first megawatt and declare the battle over. It continues its soiling campaign every hour, its thermal assault every afternoon, its abrasion schedule every shamal wind. The robots continue their circuits. The engineers continue their adjustments. The molten salt continues its thermal discharge cycle across the boundary between day and night. And the desert continues receiving the same photon bombardment it has endured for millions of years, indifferent to whether the civilization standing on its surface is burning the compressed sunlight of the Cretaceous or capturing the live sunlight of the present. Because in the flat, ferocious silence of the Arabian desert at midday, when the air above the ground shimmers with thermal distortion and every surface is too hot to touch with bare skin, something is happening that no Bedouin navigator who crossed the same ground on camelback could have predicted. The desert is being made to work. Not grudgingly, not partially, and not temporarily. At 8,000 megawatts of target capacity, in a landscape that temperature and sand have conspired for millennia to keep barren and unconquerable, the desert is being made, panel by panel, tower by tower, robot by patient robot, to power the civilization that once feared it.